if I were to judge myself with every single post I did on social, or took myself too seriously, or tried to look really good in every post or sound really good, I would never post anything because my judgmental mind would be like, that's cringe, or that's silly, or you sound like an idiot. I know this is harsh, but these are the dark things that go on in my mind. I'm Amy Porterfield, ex-corporate girl turned CEO of a multi-seven-figure business. But it wasn't all that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the budget, and the time to focus on growing my small but mighty business. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you'll see the business I have today. One that changes lives and gives me more freedom than I ever thought possible. One that used to only exist as a daydream. I created the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur or one in the making who's looking to create a business that makes an impact and a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Online Marketing Made Easy. Today, I'm diving into a motto that has really been a guiding principle behind what I choose to share with my audience on this podcast and on social media and just online in general. And if you've ever struggled with what to share online or how much to share, is it too much? Is it too little? Then pay close attention because this episode is for you. And to kick things off, let's just say that I have always been a little bit more private with sharing my personal life and all that goes on behind the scenes of my business. And it's not because I think that there's anything wrong with sharing all of that. I think it's just always been my personal preference. And if you're more forthcoming with your personal life, keep doing that if that feels good to you. Now, if it were up to me, I would just talk all day long about growing an email list, entrepreneurial mindset, creating courses, launching courses, and creating a freedom-focused business. I love talking about business. And to be quite honest, that's what I'm most comfortable with. I also have a husband that doesn't particularly love social media, and he doesn't like a camera on us when we're having our private moments, even as casual as eating dinner or going on a walk. Like if I were to break out my camera on a walk with our dog, Hobie, my husband, would feel as though we're just not being present. So it's a battle that I've had. And sometimes I'm like, hey, babe, I really want to document this. I want to share this on social. Let's just do it. And he'll say yes. But I just know in the back of my mind, he doesn't love it, which makes it awkward. So I try not to whip out the camera at every minute behind the scenes. Now, one thing I've realized over the last few years is that people want to do business with other people they connect with. They want to feel like they know that person. So there's got to be a human with some heart behind the brand, even if it's a company brand, which is something I'm thinking about moving to instead of being a personal brand. It's just kind of where my business is going. But that doesn't mean that I won't be a part of the story about the messaging because people want to connect with another person, not a logo or a brand. That I know for sure. So it's not enough for me just to talk about list building and course creation and be done with it. I have to get personal to make that connection. And I believe that to my core because I think about the businesses and the companies that I connect with and learn from, and I could name a person behind each of those businesses and brands. I think that's important. So I have really opened up my life on social media more than I ever have been comfortable with in the past. So over the last few years, and I've heard it from many of you that you've noticed that I have been more open and vulnerable and personable on social media. And I'll be honest, I often second guess myself just a little bit like, ooh, is this a little too much? Or a question that does not serve me, but I ask often is this a little cringy? Or should I really be sharing this? Like, I'll tell you what was really cringy. Hobie and I did a video. If you're on TikTok, well, now it's on Instagram, of Pookie and her husband saying Pookie's fire. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm already cringing for myself. But it was like this big funny thing on TikTok. And so Hobie and I did it. And he went along with it and really didn't want to, but he was being a good sport. So we posted that video. It was just for fun and entertainment. And it got a lot of views. Of course, way more views than my list building post or my webinar post, which kind of kills me inside. But also, I'm sure some people looked at that and they're like, that is so cringe, Amy. You are a woman in her 40s and you're acting like a 20-year-old. Like, this is what I think people are thinking in their head. And so it was hard for me to post, but it was fun and we were just joking and I just did it. I just went along with it. My social media gal's like, come on, let's do it. So yeah, sometimes I post things and I know they're a little cringe and you want to look away. So do I, my friend. But if I judge every move I make on social, I would never post anything. Did you just hear that? Because I think you and I can relate to that, right? Like, I'm not alone. If I were to judge myself with every single post I did on social or took myself too seriously or tried to look really good in every post or sound really good, I would never post anything because my judgmental mind would be like, that's cringe or that's silly or you sound like an idiot. I know this is harsh, but these are the dark things that go on in my mind. So I want to be just a little bit more casual, a little bit more open, stop taking myself so seriously. And sometimes that means I'm going to post something a little cringy, but people are going to laugh. And the comments were really funny. So many people got it and they're like, you nailed it. And that's really fun. But I'm sure my mom, she's like, what is this? She's not on TikTok. She's like, what are you doing in this video? I'm like, oh, geez, I'm sure other people are like, what is happening if they don't know the silliness of Pookie? Regardless, let's move on. So throughout the years of being a little bit more open publicly, I've come up with a motto that helps me determine whether or not I want to share. And this is more so the lessons I've learned along the way, the personal stuff, the vulnerable stuff. I mean, this is not about a Pookie video. What I'm talking about is like the real life stuff that I share. And when I am sharing behind the scenes or personal things, my motto is always scars over scabs. Scars over scabs. Now, you might have heard something similar to this if you follow Glennon Doyle. I didn't actually learn this from her, but when we were creating this episode, my podcast producer's like, oh, I've also heard Glennon Doyle talk about this. And I like what she says. Basically, she approaches her writing, like writing in her books, from the scars, not the open wound. And the reason being is she says in order to share the most vulnerable lessons with her audience and truly connect with them, she needs to be still with her pain. Meaning when it's painful, when she's actively learning the lesson, she's still, which means she's not sharing that. That's the open wound. She will wait until it's a scar. And I completely and utterly agree with this. And this is the exact same approach I take. So if I'm going to share something from either my personal life or from my business that has to do with a challenge that I have had, I likely won't share details about it until a scab has become a scar. So bear with me here. This is kind of the gross part, but a scab is still oozing, right? It hasn't scarred over yet. It's a little bloody, a little bruised, kind of yuck. And if you use it as a metaphor for a challenge you're going through, you feel exposed. You're still in it. It's still healing. You're still learning. You're still coming up with the reason behind it, the meaning behind it. You are in it. When you're in that phase of a challenge, it feels very vulnerable. You don't have all the answers. You certainly don't have a solution. And sometimes you aren't even thinking straight. You're very emotional. And you're just figuring it out. You're in the process. You have lots of emotions, some valid, some not, or maybe they're all valid, but some don't make sense. I'm sure you can relate to this feeling, right? Like think of a breakup. Think of a breakup. You've gone through a breakup with somebody, and we're talking the first few weeks of that breakup. You are not thinking clearly. Should I call him? Should I not call him? Do I reach out to her? Do I not reach out to her? Do I drive by their house? No, probably a bad idea. But you're having these irrational thoughts, right? Maybe they were good to me, even though you knew they weren't. Like it's just things aren't making sense and you're just going through the motions in the beginning. Now, a scar, it's been healed. and there's evidence of a wound, but it is not oozing anymore. I think that the point here, there is evidence of a wound. It did happen. You know it happened, but it's not oozing anymore. And if we're going to look at this as a metaphor, you're not deep in it anymore. You're not super emotional over it. You're clear headed now. You're not confused. You don't have lots of questions still. It's closed up. It's scabbed over, and you've been able to move on from it. And what's most important, there's less of a charge and it doesn't hurt anymore. And that means that there's probably some lessons you've learned from it. So when I have problems, challenges, confusion, and overwhelm, I may allude to it a little bit on the podcast, but I rarely get into it at all until it becomes a scar. I don't get into the details of the emotion of it until it has scarred over. Because when it's a scar, I feel like I'm less emotional. I can share my lessons from it. I will say matter-of-factly, this is what it was. This is how painful it was. This is where I struggled. This is where I went wrong. This is why I was confused or hurt or frustrated or resentful or whatever it is. And I can share all of these things because I've already passed and healed from it. And I'm able to feel good about the lessons I've learned, the direction I'm going, why I'm going in that direction. And I'm able to do so with more of a leadership perspective than if I'm in the thick of it, I'm still working through it. And I want to be your guide. I literally have signed myself up to say, I'll go before you. I'll test it out. I'll try it. I'll make the mistakes and share with you what worked and what didn't work. Like I have literally assigned that role to myself. And luckily, and I'm so fortunate, many of you see me as a guide. And I think it's because I put in the reps and it's years and years. And also I will absolutely share my scars, but I don't think it serves you if I shared just my scabs, the ooziness of it. And now here's something tricky. We all love when people share the oozy. We love when people share the scabs. That is why reality TV is so popular. And I'm guilty of this. I'll watch Real Housewives all day long. They're in it. It's messy. You're just like, what? This is a train wreck. It's like when we're on a highway and we always look at the car crash. We want to know who's in it, what happened, what's going on. It's in the moment. And we're like making the traffic worse because we're slowing down. That is human nature, but I wouldn't say it's healthy. I don't think we're better because we saw the scab. We were in it. We're just nosy. And that's just human nature. So yes, I get it, but I don't think it serves us well. Now, another kind of take on this is you might disagree and say, but the scab, Amy, is real and vulnerable. It's in the moment, so it's more relatable. Like I don't always have the answers. And it's interesting. I went to drinks the other night with a student of mine who is now more of a peer. And we were just sharing some of the challenges we both were having in business. And she said a few times, geez, it's so good to hear that you have these same problems, Amy. You know, I'm 10 years ahead of her. And she'll say, it's so refreshing to know I'm not alone here. And even someone that has such a big business still has these challenges. Like we were talking about hiring and how hard hiring is, and talking about content creation and getting stuck, like the normal stuff. And so I don't ever want to come across as not relatable. I totally can relate to everything you're going through because I've been there. But I also don't think it serves you for us to be miserable together, to be like, yeah, you have problem hiring, so do I. So I get what she was saying, that I think you all should know, don't put me on a pedestal and know that I go through the same challenges you do. But for some of you, I am ahead of you in terms of years of entrepreneurship and kind of figured some things out. So I'd rather be a resource to you than just be relatable. I think that's important. And so I think I can be relatable and a resource if I come from the scars. Now, what would be wrong, in my opinion, is if I never shared scabs or scars. If I always acted like it's always working. If I said, no, this is good. Here's what's good. Here's what's working. Here's all my accomplishments, and never shared my challenges. That to me is unrelatable. And I'm not that person. So I think that I feel good about the amount that I share. But I get it. I get that we want to kind of know that we're not alone and that we're not different and that our challenges aren't unique in the sense that something's wrong with us. So I always want you to hear of my challenges because they're just like yours, my friend, but I also want to guide you through them. And I think that is good leadership. Years ago, I shared a 9-minute podcast episode about my insecurity about my weight. It was called The Real Reason Why I Hate Doing Video. It's episode 179. And the reason I wasn't doing more video back then is because I was very self-conscious about my weight. And I just wanted to share that I was really insecure with whoever needed to hear it. Now, it was only a 9-minute episode versus like a 30 or 45-minute episode that I normally do because I didn't have any lessons to share. I wasn't adding any value and I was just saying, this is where I'm at. And I think a lot of my audience is there as well. So my whole goal was just to say, you're not alone. I think a lot of my audience struggled to get on video live because they're insecure. And that's where I was. So that instance, episode 179, is an exception to the rule. Once in a while, I think it's important to just share, hey, this is where I'm at. I haven't figured it out. And when I do, I will be the first to share. But I felt compelled in that moment to share, this is where I'm at. And I even said, I don't have the answers for you, and I don't necessarily want advice. I just wanted to share, if you're feeling this way, so am I. And that was an example of, this is kind of oozy right now. And I don't know what compelled me to say it, except actually I do. I wanted to be released of the shame I was feeling about being overweight and getting on camera. And I thought, look, I'm not fooling anyone. You see me on camera. You see what weight I am. And in my mind, I didn't feel good, healthy, confident at that weight. Believe me, whatever weight you are, I hope that you can learn to love yourself. This is something I've really struggled with for many, many years and I've worked on. But for me, I just wanted to say, this is my challenge right now. And so that was an exception. And I'm glad I did it, but it's rare that I will do that because I know I was relatable, but it's not like I was a guide. And I want the role of a guide. I feel called. So I share this one episode with you to say, yeah, sometimes I make exceptions. I'm not hard and fast, black and white in that situation, but 90% of the time, I'm going to go to the scar. I think it helps people in a bigger way when I do so. Because imagine if I only did those shorty little episodes. Here's my problem. See you later. There's no value there. It's just reality TV. And I'm not interested in being on reality TV. I want to be relatable and I want my audience to know that I get it. I totally understand where they're at. I've been in the trenches, but I also want them to know how to get to the other side. So it's not just that I want to be a guide because of my ego. It's that I want to make it easier for you. I want you to get results faster than I did in my business. I want the heartache and the struggle and the confusion to be less for you than it was for me. So that's why I want to be a guide and not just a reality TV star, if we're using metaphors. Oh, and one more thing. I also don't want to learn from someone who's exactly where I'm at. That doesn't make any sense. Like one thing I learned from my time with Tony Robbins was get into rooms where everybody else is more successful than you. If we're talking business, get into rooms where people are doing bigger things than you have done yet. And so I don't want to learn from people that are exactly where I'm at. I learn from people who are way more ahead of me. That is so much more valuable. So that's another reason why I think I need to be a guide and not just your pal that is miserable in business on certain days and you can relate to that. So I think that's important as well. I think we all want to learn from someone who's overcome the challenges, moved past the chaos, and has gotten results. Even if they're just a few steps ahead of you, I think that's important. I want to be that person to my community. So to wrap this up, I rarely share when I'm in the thick of it, when I don't have the answers, when I feel confused and very emotional. I might allude to it, but I will wait to fully share until the lessons have been learned and the value can be added. And I totally understand that there's people who feel differently than me, both in terms of what they want to share online and what they want to hear. And guess what? That's okay. If I really want to stay true to myself and my goals for my business, then this is exactly where I need to be. And for you, my friend, it's important to determine your own philosophy on what you share online. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And heck, your approach might even change over time. Whatever you decide, make sure it's something you're comfortable with. Because what's most important when it comes to connecting with your audience is that you're doing it from a place of, you guessed it, authenticity. All right. I hope you loved this shorty episode. I hope you found it valuable. Thanks once again for hanging out with me. And if you would be so kind to share this episode with someone that you know would find it valuable as well, I would love it. And if you love this podcast, please leave me a review. I read all of them and love to hear from you. All right. I will see you Thursday for more entrepreneurial goodness. Bye for now.